Hello, my name is Debbie Johnson. I'm an attorney. Today we're going to do a case study in ethics. It involves the Ford Pinto case in the 1970s and cost-benefit analysis that was involved in that case. In the late 1960s, Ford decided that it wanted to enter the subcompact market. They wanted to compete with Datsun, Toyota, and Volkswagen. Their concept was to have a 2,000-pound car and for it to have a roomy trunk, high gas miles, and cost no more than $2,000. Lee Iacocca, president of Ford, made it clear he didn't want it 1 ounce over 2,000 pounds and he didn't want it 1 cent sold over $2,000. The Pinto was released in 1971. If you've never seen a Ford Pinto before, here's a photo of the back and the front of one, and notice the wide trunk. Now, the normal time from conception till the car rolls off the assembly line into the showroom is 43 months or 3.5 years. With the Pinto, to meet Iacocca's deadlines from conception until it went into the showroom was 25 months. That becomes very significant later on. Before the Pinto had even rolled off the assembly line, Ford was aware that the automobile had gas tank issues. It came primarily from trying to make a large trunk in the small car. They located the gas tank 6 inches from the bumper, not in the traditional place where gas tanks go. It only took 5 miles per hour impact with a bumper to risk striking a gas tank. The tube from the gas tank could easily be ripped away or ruptured, and a rear-end collision could jam up the differential housing, which would push 4 sharp bolts into the gas tank, causing leaks. And if there was a spark from any kind of combustion or of any type, that would cause a fire trap. Ford was well aware that the Pinto gas tank was a ticking time bomb. 11 of their pre-production tests showed that the gas tank would erupt, and they conducted over 40 crash tests over the lifetime of the Pinto. Only 3 did not have a fuel leak or rupture. And at 30 miles an hour, the gas tank would buckle up like an accordion to the back seat. And at 40 miles per hour, the doors would jam, creating an enclosed, locked inferno for people to die and burn to death. In 1972, Ford did a cost-benefit analysis on the issues involving the Pinto gas tank. A cost-benefit analysis looks at the cost to correct the defect versus the benefit to be derived. And if the cost exceeds the benefit, then you generally don't make the repair or modification. If the benefit exceeds the cost, then you do. You can look at these figures here per death and per serious burn injury case, and then you have to question, even when you look at them in $2013, which I calculated for you, whether these figures are disingenuous. Weigh this against the video that I have of the crash test. Look at the difficulty the man has in opening these doors after the vehicle's been burnt. Now look at this in slow motion. Watch how it not only, see the sparks flying, watch how it not only catches the Pinto afire, but catches the Impala afire as well. See how the flames come out immediately and engulf both vehicles. Now, can you tell me that someone is going to have minor burns in this situation, particularly if they're in the back seat of that vehicle? Or what if you're the driver of the Impala? How in the world are you going to get out of that car without serious burns, if you get out at all? Ford estimated that there would be 180 serious burn injuries per year from the Ford gas tank, and 180 people would die from the serious burns that they received in the accident. In its cost-benefit analysis, Ford stated in internal memos that the cost to reduce the likelihood of explosion was $11 per car. But what was disingenuous was they failed to disclose that they had used successfully the rubber gas tank bladder for more than 50% less of the cost. So in summary, Ford, within its own internal memos, as well as documents to federal regulatory agencies, was saying that the cost to repair the fiery Ford Pinto gas tank greatly exceeded, approximately 3 to 1, the benefit to be derived of saving the human lives and the serious burn injuries. However, when you look at the issue about the rubber bladder gas tank, look at that the cost and the benefits are close in alignment. But Ford never discussed that, and they never discussed that they had success with the rubber bladder gas tank. In the 1970s, in Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company, the jury considered the cost-benefit analysis argument, and they sent a message. Beyond giving the deceased driver's family $560,000 and the severely burned 13-year-old $2,500,000 for his extensive injuries and future surgical procedures, the jury sent a message by giving $125 million punitive damage judgment. Now, to understand these numbers in today's perspective, you can see that's almost $700 million in punitive damages and almost $14 million for the child and a little over $3 million. So the question becomes, in using cost-benefit analysis, where are you going to draw the line in the sand? For the real world is, we use cost-benefit analysis in our personal life. We use it to make business decisions. But when do you decide that the cost exceeds the benefit in terms of making a correction or changing the service that you give to a customer or a client? How do you weigh it? The Ford Pinto case illustrates the difficulty in doing cost-benefit analysis. Milton Friedman gives a provocative conversation about the discussion between cost, benefit, value, freedom to choose, and ethics.
I don't know whether Ford did came to the right answer or not. That's a question of whether these numbers are valid numbers for the relative costs of different things. You're not arguing about a principle if you once agree with me that if it had been $200 million, the cost per life saved would have been $200 million. You would not argue. Look, let me go back for a moment.
Can I say something in response to that? If Ford had not been able to market those cars in the same kind of economic bracket because of the price of installing this one plastic block, that would be a different question. Maybe Ford could have considered redesigning the whole car so as to make it cheaper. But what we're talking about is balancing advantages and balancing principles.
And that's why
Just a minute. I'm a supporter of abortion. Therefore, I don't believe that every single human life is sacred. I believe that principles have to be balanced. And yet, I don't see Ford spending $13 less on each car at the cost of 200 lives a year as being a principled position to take. And yet, I think your logic requires it.
Suppose it had been one fewer life a year. So that the $13 per car, so that one life, instead of being 200 times, what's 200 times 200,000? It's 40 million. Suppose it had been one life a year, so that it cost 40 million. Would it then have been okay for Ford not to have put in that
You can't predict that one life is going to be cost because of a physical defect in the car. This was a clear...
I know, but you're evading the question of principle.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that they knew before they put the car out that there was a mechanical defect in it.
You know when you buy a car, you know that your chance of being killed in a Pinto is greater than your chance of being killed in a Mack truck.
No, I didn't. I didn't know that the gas tank would rupture.
Of course it is a question.
Well,
every one of us separately in this room could, at a cost, reduce his risk of dying tomorrow. You don't have to walk across the street. Of course. The question is he willing to pay for it? And the question here he should be raising, if he wants to raise a question of principle, the principle he should raise is whether Ford wasn't required to attach to this car the statement, we have made this car $13 cheaper, and therefore it is whatever the percent is, it is 1% more risky for you to buy it.
But why?
Now then he would be arguing a real question of principle.
Why should they do that? Doesn't that interfere with the free enterprise system that you're touting?
No.
Why not?
Because the consumer should be free to decide what risk he wants to bear. If you want to pay $13 extra for that, you should be free to do it. If you don't want to pay $13...
So then the government does have the right to require information of corporations, is that right?
No, the government has a right to provide courts of law in which corporations that deliberately conceal material that is relevant can be sued for fraud and made to pay very heavy expenses. And that is a desirable part of the market, of course. What I'm trying to say to you is that these things are really a little bit more subtle and sophisticated than you are at first led to believe. You can't get easy answers along this line because your way of putting it really doesn't really get at the fundamental principles involved. The real fundamental principle is that people individually should be free to decide how much they're willing to pay for reducing the chances of their death. Now, people mostly aren't willing to pay very much. I personally regard this as very, very illogical.
What are some pointers when dealing with a cost-benefit analysis situation? Ask yourself, how much will the correction cost? Does the potential defect affect the health and well-being of a human, the health or the well-being of an animal, the value of property, time, or money, or a combination of any of the above? I suggest to you that if it affects a human being, to weigh that much more heavily than if it involves the loss of money. Is the damage or injury short-term or long-term? Use accurate damage figures when you try to calculate the cost and the benefit. It's better to overestimate the benefit and underestimate the cost than vice versa, as you saw in the Ford case. Assume the worst case scenario when you're analyzing cost-benefit. Will it damage your reputation temporarily or in the long term? What are the odds of a successful verdict if sued? Assume the worst and hope for the best. If the correction is undertaken, how can you turn this into a positive advertising or public relations effort? Did you disclose the defect or the problem to the consumer? As Freeman was talking about, let them make the choice, not you. Will I be able to easily sleep at night? That's a huge one. Remember, what may be legal may not be ethical or profitable in the long run. I hope the Ford Pinto case study involving the ethics of cost-benefit analysis proves useful to you in your business and personal life. Thank you.